call upon your name. You keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, the soul awakes to know your grace. For I am yours, and you are.
Right. We're going to be in the book of Psalms today, chapter 100. I got a couple guys back here, got some Bibles. If you need one, just slip your hand up and they'll get you one real quick. Anybody need one or want one? All right, I guess we're good. Thanks, guys. Psalms chapter 100. I love that video of, I actually used that video for a guy that was really struggling with just God and beliefs and stuff, and he actually got saved after I through showing that video and talking to him and stuff. Pretty cool. We're going to talk today about your view of God. And I guess if you give a title to my message, it'd be if you have a proper view of God will equal a proper response to God. So if you have a proper view of God, you'll have a proper response to God. On the contrary, if you don't have the right view of God, you're going to have a response that is not the right response, the proper response. We're going to read here in Psalms. If I get to the right place, that might help too. Psalms chapter 100, and then we're going to talk for a while, and then we're going to jump back, and we're going to actually look at a couple other chapters right next to Psalms 100 as well. Let's read real quick. It says, "Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. Know ye that the Lord, he is God. It is he that hath made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people, and the sheep of his pasture. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving, and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him, and bless his name. For the Lord is good, his mercy is everlasting, and his truth endureth to all generations." Just notice how many times it says him and he and his in there. So again, as we jump into this today, we're not going to get into the scripture right off the bat, but we'll get back to it a little bit later. A proper view of God creates in us a proper response to God. Everything that you do is affected by how you view God. Everything. How we live, what we do, how we love and serve, whether others or God himself, how we worship, or even if we will worship, what and how much we spend and on who or what we spend it on, even where we live or what we do in our lives, what we do for a job. Everything that we do, how we live, is affected by how you view God. Absolutely everything. All is affected on how you see him. You ever wonder why perhaps that we struggle with certain temptations, with certain sins in our lives, whether it be lust or anger or greed, pride or lying? A lot of times we get to this place where we think if we just had some more tenacity, some more self-determination, if we just dug our heels in and just pushed forward, we could get through this sin, through this struggle in our lives. And I don't know if that's all that there is to it. While we have a responsibility on our end, I believe that how we view God, again, affects all those things that we do in our lives. So it's not just your self-determination. I think what we need is really a fresh dose and maybe a deeper view of God and of the gospel as well. And that's what we want to try to get accomplished today. So I ask you, so how do you view God? I don't mean by his physical appearance, as it said in the video. Jesus didn't have a visual appearance that was attractive to attract people with his visual. And it even says that God is spirit. And we know that Moses saw the backside of God, but we have really no idea of what God looks like. I remember a guy at a church we went to, I went and visited him one time, and he started going up in arms. He was really frustrated that we didn't have pictures of God and of Jesus all over the church. And he literally stopped coming to church because we didn't have pictures of Jesus all over the wall. I'm like, well, first of all, what does he look like, right? We don't have a clue. Every picture that we have is Jesus holding a lamb with doves behind him, and he's blonde-haired and blue eyes, right? And that's not really what a Jewish guy looks like, but, whatever, to each his own, I guess. So I guess what we're getting at is we're not looking at the physical appearance of God or of Jesus, because in reality that does nothing for us, but how you view God in his character and in his person, I believe, affects everything. Some of the different examples that video brought out, perhaps you see God as a judge, an angry judge, or perhaps a police officer, and just one that's just waiting to pounce on you. I mean, the second that you make a mistake, he is just ready to pounce and destroy you. And some people just quiver and shake because they fear God in this way. And while it does say that we are to fear God, it's not in the manner that this is. We're to fear God in his power and in his authority and in who he is. But we're not to fear God in this way. And as well, he is a judge, but not in this manner. And so he's not an angry judge. He's not just waiting. I mean, just waiting for you just to barely get out of line and just pounce on you and just destroy you. That's not God's character. And that's sometimes what we've been taught. That's where the Pharisees were. This is some of the things that many churches, I feel, have taught for a long time, and I believe it's given people a false view of God, and therefore people have had a false response to God. Think of this, okay? If we think of God as this angry, raging, wrathful God all the time, just waiting for us to fail, I believe that so many people have shed that off and thrown that aside because there's only so long that you can handle that burden. And eventually they leave the church and leave Christianity because of that view. Perhaps you see God maybe as a school teacher, one that's just there to enforce the rules and give you a whole lot of work to do, especially at home, right? Can I get an amen from the teens, from the kids? All right. You guys aren't listening in the back, are you? Right? So it's just to give you a lot of work. Man, you got to come to church. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to cross all your T's and dot all your I's. You got so many things that you have to do. And again, it's great. And yes, we're to serve. And yes, we're to serve in our church. We're to serve God, as it says, in spirit and in truth. But again, if that's how we view God alone, it's another burden that is laid upon us. And eventually we want to shed that off. Again, we're to serve him, but not with that alone as our idea as to why we serve him. Maybe he's just this light or this aura that's just glowing and this just real nice music in the background or something. Maybe that's how you view God, just as this kind of mystical force that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you, or maybe you don't really understand it. Maybe that's how you view God. I don't know how that would ever change us, just having that alone as our idea of how God looks. Maybe he's this kind of an abstract idea. Maybe he's a force or a concept. Maybe he's an idea in some other people's minds, but you're still kind of questioning and not sure what to think about it. We always welcome those questions here. We want people to ask those questions. People have those doubts and those questions, and sometimes this should be the place that they can come to ask those questions and not feel rejected. If people have questions about God, is he really real? This is the place that you should be able to ask those questions, and we welcome those. Maybe he's, as the video said, maybe he's a genie for you. Just rub that lamp and say your wish, and you get whatever your heart desires. Maybe that's how you view him, or maybe you feel like you've already used up your 3 wishes, and so you keep praying and nothing's being answered. Maybe you just see God as this genie, someone to make wishes to, and sometimes you never seem to get the answer you're looking for. Perhaps you see him as that landlord, someone you're just you got to pay your dues to. You got to pay the rent. You got to pay up. You got to tithe. You got to give. And that's all you see God as, is just somebody that's just waiting there, maybe leaving the note on the door, said, hey, you're late on your rent, and you need to get it in. Maybe these are, or maybe there's something else that you view God as. I would have to say that I probably saw God in maybe different portions of these for most of my Christian life. I got saved when I was very young. I was 7 years old, and I actually worked on staff at churches for 5 years before I really feel like I ever came to the point where I really saw God in a new way. Now, in no way is this complete or thorough, completely of the character of God, but perhaps just to whet your appetite to desire to know God more and to see His character and take God out of the box maybe that you've put Him in for a long time. So I ask you tonight, or this morning, where are you? Where are you in your view of God? How do you see Him today? I got 3 points to go over. The first thing I want us to talk about is, first of all, is He real? Is He real? And I got real just bold and it's all capitalized. I don't mean real in the sense of do you believe in Him or do you think that He exists? Again, those are great topics and great things to talk about, and we talk about them quite often, but not a matter of does He exist, but do you really believe that He is real to you? Or is He just, yeah, you've believed in Him, yeah, maybe you've even been saved, but man, He's just kind of like this idea, this thought out there, and it's never been personal for you. So is He real to you? As I mentioned in my testimony, I think until about 3 years ago, I never really experienced God. I never really saw Him as something real, someone real. I never had a personal relationship with Him as often we talk about. And it's incredible when you get to that point. And so again, the question is He real to you? Is He more than just words in some old book that you read or you bring with you on Sunday? Is He just words on these pages? Is He just a name of somebody way off in history that you really don't know? Is He just lyrics in a song that we sing? Is He more than the Christmas story? Is He more than Easter? Is He real? And again, not do you believe in Him? Not does He exist, but is He real to you? Is He more than just an idea? Again, the title, if you have a proper view of God, you'll have a proper response to God. And the first question and the first thing we have to come to grips with is He real to you? And the next thing is that proper view. Do you have a proper view of God? You ever think you know somebody? Maybe you've known somebody for years and you really think you know them. This is probably normally in a bad context a lot of times. You're like, I thought I knew them, but then I found out I didn't know them. They were a jerk, you know. Do you ever think you know somebody only to find out that you really didn't know them fully? I thought I knew God. I knew a lot of things about God. But knowing stuff about God and knowing God are two entirely different things. You can know a lot about God. You can know the Bible front and back. You can know all the doctrines. You can know all the stories. You can know the Christmas story and the Easter story, and you can quote the scriptures, and you can do all those things. But until you really know Him, until He's real to you, until you have that proper view of Him, you'll never have the proper response to Him. Again, as I said before, we got to take Him out of the box. A lot of times we'll hear a message and we'll hear God is a judge. And all of a sudden we're like, we got tunnel vision and we think God is a judge and He's ready to pounce on me. And then we'll hear another message and God is love, or we'll hear these different messages, and so we put God in this box and He is a judge. And we're like stuck there until we hear another message and they're like, oh, now God's love. And so realizing that God is all these things. He is so much, and He is so much more. But taking Him out of the box and never containing Him, because first of all, you can't contain Him in any box that your mind can comprehend. He is beyond any box that you can imagine. There's no box that can contain Him, and He's more than you really think He is, or more than you've ever been told that He is. He's so much more than all those things. And so I want you to take the walls of the box down. And just look at God in a whole new perspective. And you may not get all the answers here today, but again, as I said, I pray that this will be something that will whet your appetite, that you will have a desire to go and to seek and to search what is the heart of God? What is the character of God? How does God view me? How does God view the world? All those things, I pray that you will go and search and look at those things. So is he really a judge? Is he just a principal? Is he that genie in a bottle? Is he a teacher? Is he a police officer? And on and on. Is he just one of these things? He is so much more. I believe that the best way for us to get a proper view of God is to look at two things. As the video talked about, we got to look at Christ himself. We got to look at the character of Jesus and how he lived, how he served, how he loved, how he sacrificed, and all those things. And as we look at the heart of Jesus, we will see the character of God because Jesus is God, right? As well, we need to look deeper into the gospel. Again, I knew, and many of us, probably all of us, know what the gospel is. We know about Jesus. We know what he came to do. We know he died. We know he rose again. And we know he paid for our sins. We know all those things, but it's coming from the place in our lives where we know it in our minds and accepting it and making it real in our hearts. He is so much more. Looking into the gospel, I think as we know we're so familiar with the gospel. We're so familiar with Jesus, with God, with the stories of the Bible, that oftentimes that generates this apathy in our lives. This kind of, I don't care, or it's no big deal, or I'm familiar with it, and what do they say? Familiarity breeds contempt, right? I think it breeds contempt. I think it breeds apathy. It's just, I don't care, or I don't really care about it, I don't want it, and we shut it off. And so I want you to take him out of the box, take the familiarity out of your mind, and look at the cross in a fresh way, in a new way. Not necessarily in a new way, but in a deeper way, in a fresh way. Don't just, I know Jesus died for me. Because we can easily say the same thing, and it can completely mean something different to me. I can say, Jesus died on the cross for me, and he rose again to pay for my sins. I know that. I knew that for a long time, probably about 17 years. I think I knew that in my mind, and I've been saved for about 17 years before I came to the place in my life where I said, wow, wait a second, let's take a look at this again. You mean Jesus, God in human flesh, creator of all, perfect and sinless in every way, drank the cup of the wrath of God, the anger that God has for sin, the hatred that God has for my sin, and he drank that cup for me. That's the side that we don't see a lot of times. We don't look at, we don't focus on. We look at the cross and we think the physical anguish and punishment, which was excruciating and horrible, and it says he was marred more than any man. And we look at that and it's terrible, and it absolutely is, and that alone should move us and stir us. And as we look at the cross and we see his love demonstrated for us on the cross, it should be something that changes us. But then you go deeper and you look that he drank the cup of the wrath of God for everything that I've ever done. From the smallest white lie to the greatest, deepest, darkest sin that I have ever committed, he did that for me. It's going from saying, Jesus died for me and he rose again, to saying, man, he died for me. He paid for my sins. He took my place. I should have been the one. You think of Barabbas. Barabbas is the one that Jesus took his place. It was his cross. It was his deserved place to go and die because of the sins, the crimes that he had done. He was a murderer and a thief, right? And all of a sudden, Jesus, do you want Jesus or do you want Barabbas? And they said Jesus. Barabbas is a picture of you and I. Barabbas is you. You are Barabbas. You are the one standing in judgment, about to be executed for the sins that you've committed, and Jesus took your place. Again, I know we know these things, but it's to look at it in a whole new way and to be moved by it. Let it be real to you. Let the seeing God in a new view, a fresh view, change you and transform you. Let's look at some of the other stories of the New Testament. We're not going to turn there, but just look at them and talk about them. At how does God see you? I think as you see how God looks at you, again, you see more of God's character and what he's like as he looks at you. How does God see you? Let's look at a couple of these stories. Let's look at Zacchaeus first, okay? Zacchaeus, the wee little man, right, that climbed up the sycamore tree. So what was Zacchaeus? He was a tax collector, right? Tax collectors in that day, they're still probably despised, I guess, right? But a tax collector, beyond, there's regulations and those things now. These guys robbed and stole from everybody, right? They lied, they stole. This guy was like a Bernie Madoff. I mean, he was rich. He stole from everybody. He was hated by everyone. And so Jesus is coming into town, and he climbs up the tree, as we know. And what does Jesus do? He walks over straight to that tree that Zacchaeus is up in. Once he say to him, hey, I want to come to your house today. You think this is a guy that, it's not somebody that you would think that Jesus would want to communicate with, right? What were the Pharisees always talking about? They're always saying, hey, man, he can't be of God. Look who he's eating with. Look who he's talking with. Look whose house he's in. He's with sinners and publicans and all the worst of the worst. And now he goes to Zacchaeus, one of the most hated men probably of the city because of what he did and who he was. And Jesus goes to his house, and because of how we see Jesus in his love and his character towards Zacchaeus, we can relate to that. You know, I'm not worthy that Jesus would come to my house, but yet he desires to come to our house. He desires to come to us, right? We look at the woman at the well, or that had 5 husbands and living with a guy at the time, and to think, how is it that Jesus would care enough about her? Or the woman taken in adultery. She had been caught in the act of committing adultery and is about to be stoned to death. I mean, right at death's doorstep, and Jesus comes into the scene. They bring her to him. And as we see how he handles this, we see the character of God. We get to see God in a whole new way. We see his grace. We see his mercy. They're about to stone her. Can you imagine putting yourself in that position? I mean, you are literally moments from being executed. Moments. These guys have stones. I mean, this is an excruciating way to go, right? Everybody's like, I want to go in my sleep, in my own bed. No, this is a horrible way to go. And she is laying there completely at the mercy of Jesus. They ask, what do you think we should do with her, Jesus? And he starts doodling on the ground. I mean, he gets like an Etch-a-Sketch out, and he's just like coloring on the ground. I so wish I knew what he wrote or what he did. I don't care if it was just doodling. I want to see a picture of it, right? And he says he acts as if he didn't even hear them. And finally, he stands up and he says, as we all know, he that is without sin casts the first stone. What do? We start hearing thuds all over as they drop the rocks and walk away. And these words have always captivated me and have been amazing to me, that as they all leave, and it says it's just her and him. It's just Jesus and this woman. And I can imagine she's weeping and she's crying, and she's, just moments away from being killed. And now thinking, what is Jesus going to do? I've heard about this guy. I know he's got great power. What is he going to do to me? And so he says to her, woman, not in a hateful way, but in a very compassionate and loving way. Woman, where are those accusers? Where are those that were just judging you and just about to kill you? And she says, nowhere, Lord. And then he says these words to her, I think are amazing, and it's just a picture of grace. This is where the law meets grace. He says, neither do I condemn thee. Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. So we see how Jesus handles this woman, as we see how he handles Zacchaeus or the woman at the well, these people that seem like they're the outcasts and they don't deserve forgiveness. And Jesus walks in and just embraces them, loves them, and he died for those horrific people. He died for people like Barabbas. And we want to cast aside, and we're like, oh yeah, the bad people out there. No, we're in the same boat. And yet he loved you and I. Some of the verses he says that he came to seek and to save that which was lost. Think about just that seeking. I think when we have the view of God as just this kind of this idea, or maybe this impersonal being, that he's often in space, often the distance, and he has no connection with me. We're like, man, he's got too many other things to deal with. He's got 7 billion other people to worry about, little old me, right? But to think that God came and he's seeking. He seeks and saves, right? He is searching after us. A lot of times I think we have this idea that we are just trying. We have to try harder to get to God, not just for salvation. Again, perhaps we know that in our minds. We don't have to work for our salvation, but still there's this desire in our bodies and our flesh that we still have to do something. But no, it says that he came to seek us. He came to seek us. Another verse I think that just beautifully shows the character of God. It says, no greater love hath any man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends, right? He calls you his friend. He desires to know you and for you to know him. I don't think that's oftentimes the way that we view God. And I don't think that some of those other views of God, that they change us like we need to be changed. Like I, for 17 years, lived a life that I knew God and I knew all those things, but I wasn't changed by him. I was saved, but I wasn't changed. Man, I'm telling you, it's amazing what things changed in my life when I finally God became real to me. When I finally began to see some more of his character, and I had no way understand fully the character of God, but when you begin to see him new and in a fresh way, it changes us. Let's check out some scripture again. In Psalms 95. Psalms 95 should be right there, close to where you were. We're going to first look at the proper view of God and look at in some of these verses here at just the beauty of how they see God here. 95 verse number 3 says this, for the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods, and in his hand are the deep places of the earth, and the strength of the hills is his also. The sea is his, and he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. We see creation there. We see his power. We see his might as he holds these things in his hand. Let's jump down to chapter 96 and verse number 4. It says, for the Lord is great and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods. For all the gods of the nations are idols, but the Lord made the heavens. Honor and majesty are before him. Strength and beauty are in his sanctuary. Give unto the Lord, O ye kindreds of the people. Give unto the Lord glory and strength. Verse number 13 says, before the Lord, for he cometh to judge the earth. He shall judge the world with righteousness and the people with his truth. And then jump over to chapter number 100 and verse number 3. It says, know ye that the Lord, he is God. It is he that hath made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Verse number 5, for the Lord is good. His mercy is everlasting, and his truth endureth to all generations. Some of the things we see here, he is great. He is above all. He has all in his hands. He has great strength, infinite strength, creator. He's our sustainer. He is to be feared. He is beautiful. He is merciful. He has truth and righteousness. And so, again, as we begin to see more of the character of God, we have a broader view of God. It generates in us a proper response. So let's get into that, a proper response. How we view him, again, determines how we respond to him. How should we respond? It affects absolutely everything in our life. Let's look again at these verses. It's amazing. In each one of these chapters, you see the view of God, and then we also see their response to God as they see God in his proper view. Back in chapter 95 and verse number 1 and 2, it says, O come, let us sing unto the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before his presence with thanksgiving and make a joyful noise unto him with psalms. Make a joyful noise, sing unto him, give him thanksgiving, sing to him, praise him. Chapter number 96 and verse number, verse number 1. Oh, sing unto the Lord a new song. Sing unto the Lord all the earth. Sing unto the Lord, bless his name. Show forth his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the heathen, his wonders among all people. Verse number 7. Give unto the Lord, O ye kindreds of the people. Give unto the Lord glory and strength. Give unto the Lord the glory due unto his name. Bring an offering and come into his courts. O worship the Lord in the beauty of his holiness. Fear before him all the earth. Say among the heathen that the Lord reigneth. The world also shall be established, that it shall not be moved. He shall judge the people righteously. Let the heavens rejoice and let the earth be glad. Let the sea roar and the fullness thereof. Let the field be joyful and all that is therein. Then shall all the trees of the woods rejoice. And then last, back in chapter 100, verse number 1 and 2, and then verse number 4. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him and bless his name. We see some responses here. We see singing. We see praise. We see worship. We see glory being given to the one that deserves all glory, as it says in chapter 96. We see declaration of him to all people. This is a response. Kind of going off track here. I was always taught you just go and tell people. And I did it out of responsibility and out of duty. I never did it because I desired, because I cared about that person, or because I cared about God. I did it because I knew that's what I was supposed to do. But when we see God in his proper context, our response is that we want to declare his greatness to all people. This is a response. These are responses that we would sing, we would praise, we would worship, we would glorify him, magnify him, declare him. We would fear him. We would have gratitude for what he's done. We would sacrifice anything and everything because we realize that he is worth it. We would serve him not out of duty, but because we desire to. We will bless him. It's interesting. It says, bless him and give him strength. It's amazing to think that how could I bless God? How could I give him strength? He's all-powerful. And yet I have the ability to bless him and to give him strength. In fact, that's why I was created, to have fellowship with him, to praise him, to worship him. That's why you and I were created, for nothing else but to give him praise with everything that we do. And so, when we have the proper view of God, we'll have the proper response to God. When we see God in his majesty and his glory and his power and his awesomeness, when we see the cross, when we look at the gospel, and we don't say, oh, well, Jesus died for me. But when we're captivated by the greatness of what the cross is and how hopeless we are without the cross, and we see God in his full glory and majesty, then it's like, while we still have a fleshly desire and a challenge and a struggle there, the proper response almost comes naturally. I will desire to worship him. I will desire to serve him. I will desire to declare his goodness because I see him for his beauty and all that he has done for me. Again, as I said, everything that we do is affected by our view. Our response is affected completely. How we live, how we serve, how we love each other, how we love him. What we spend our money on. I literally came to the point, I was laying in bed with Lisa one night, and I got to the point where I said, is any of this worth it? Do we need any of this stuff anymore? When you're captivated by the goodness of God, nothing else matters. You don't need stuff. You don't need other people even to bring you joy, because you've got the only one that you need to give you everything that you need. Only when you see God and his character, only when you're captivated. Again, it's not enough just to know. It's got to penetrate you. It's got to consume you. It's got to transform you. Getting back, the three things that we've come across here is first of all, you got to answer for yourself: is he real? Again, not as does he exist, but is he real to you? Is he not just, yeah, I believe in him, but it doesn't do anything to affect you. It doesn't change you in any way. Is he real to you? And then as you answer that question, and maybe that's not a question that you can answer here and now, but that you need to go and get down to business with him. Is he real to you? And then, okay, what's he like? What's he really like? Take him out of the box and tear all those walls down and say, okay, let's look at the character of God. Let's look at the heart of Jesus. Let's look at how he handled things, and let's get a proper view of God. And then as you answer those two questions for yourself, then the response will come. The proper response will come. So is he real to you? How do you view him today? Again, it affects everything that you do. And then finally, how are you going to respond? How will you respond to that?
The place abounds in deepest waters. The sovereign hand will be my guide. My feet may fail and fear surrounds me. You never fail and you won't stop. I will call upon your name. You keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, the soul